Okay. Welcome to the annual PFLAG Olympia's Candidates Forum. This year is a bit different because we are, of course, in unprecedented times. Thank you for being here and giving your time for this forum. My name is Rob, or Robert, and I am an Olympia PFLAG board member and the co-moderator for this forum. Here today are several board members, Dana, our president, and Luke and Tom are both on the board. And we will begin with opening statements, which will be for 2 minutes, each of you. Please state why you are running for your office and how are you connected to the LGBT community. And we will start with Beth Dolio. I hope I didn't.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you so much for doing this. I've always enjoyed this forum. I'm Representative Beth Dolio. I currently represent the 22nd Legislative District of Thurston County, but I am running to be the next Congresswoman in the 10th Congressional District. The 22nd in Thurston County is fully encompassed in the 10th and makes up about 25% of the district. I've lived here for over 2 decades and I've raised my family here. As you all know, I am part of the LGBTQ caucus, our mighty caucus in the state legislature. And I am looking forward to joining the Equality Caucus in Congress and have been endorsed by Representatives David Cicilline and Mark Tucano, who co-chair the Equality PAC. I've also been endorsed by the Victory Fund, the LPAC, and the Equality PAC, that is the congressional PAC that works to elect LGBTQ people to Congress. I am also the proud mother of a son who identifies as bisexual, so I am in fact one of you and one of what you work to support in our community. So as part of that caucus, we've done a lot of really great things in the legislature, and it was a privilege to be a part of the caucus tracking that legislation and helping move legislation to ban conversion therapy and also to ban transgender panic as a legal defense. We just passed that this past session, and I was proud to be the number 2 person on that bill. In addition to that, I worked really hard this past session. I didn't quite get it over the finish line, but currently in Washington State, HIV drugs, Medicare coverage of HIV drugs is not very inclusive of all of the drugs that are out there. And there are a lot of people who would prefer to take a different drug than is covered by Medicaid. So I worked in our general operating budget to make a change in language to allow for more full coverage of HIV drugs for Medicaid. And so I hope that someone will take up that banner moving forward. It's a really important issue, an issue of equity to make sure that those with low income have access to the drugs that they want to treat HIV. And I was the lead proponent on it. And finally, I was also the member who kind of took the lead on getting gender X on our driver's license, attending this hearing, helping to empower people to be there. And Tracy Carlos had never testified before, and I was proud to help her have confidence and really give a great testimony there. And I was proud to testify on behalf of a couple of times on behalf of our caucus as well. So I would really be honored to earn your vote. I've loved these forums in the past. It's too bad we're not in person because it's always fun to have cookies afterwards and catch up with everybody. But thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Ms. Dolio. And I forgot the timer, so it went for a little 3 minutes. So I'm gonna let everyone else.
Sorry.
You're fine. It was kind of my fault. Everyone else can go up to 3 minutes as well then, to be fair. And next is Mr. Pierpoint. I hope I said your name right. So
close enough. Well, thank you. I was retired and I was hearing a lot of stories about homelessness in our area and how it seemed to be increasing. We were owner of a small business that got shut down by COVID-19 and some other issues. And when I saw a seat open, I thought, well, I've been a public servant for over 30 years. I still have some energy to serve, so I decided to run for the 22nd district. I have experience working on complex issues. I feel like I can use my experience to bring people together. The economy must get going. We must get businesses back open. And our homeless, I feel we're spending a lot of money without a lot of results. And I'd really like to see a new program similar to drug court with social workers active, and I'm calling it Reconnect for now. Defunding law enforcement has really been a loud discussion, and as a retired police chief, I feel I should be at the table for those discussions. I think there are changes that could be made. Some things I'm hearing make sense, like addressing mental health treatment and funding mental health in a proper way so that law enforcement are not the ones responding to those situations. New taxes, I'm opposed to new taxes. But I think that there are ways with our budget that we can solve our budget problems. The deficit isn't as big as was originally forecast. And if we can get businesses open and the economy moving, it might be even smaller yet. I truly feel the 22nd district has so much potential. I want to be part of ensuring what we do in the Tri-City area promotes tourism and makes a safe place to visit for our kids to play. I really want what everyone wants, a great place to live, and I've decided to run because I care and I think we can do better. How am I connected to the community? I worked over 30 years in law enforcement, protecting people's rights, protecting them against harassment. We had a robust school resource officer program in the largest, most diverse school district in Thurston County, and bullying and harassment is a real issue for school-age kids. And it's important that we continue that work with our law enforcement and the schools working together. And personally, I have family friends that have kids and others, and I'm very supportive, and I feel like there's good things happening, and I want to continue being part of that. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Ms. Bateman.
Hi, everyone. Thank you so much. My name is Jessica Bateman, and I currently serve as the Deputy Mayor for the City of Olympia. I was first elected in 2015 and re-elected last fall, and I am running for the open seat that is now being vacated by Representative Beth Dolio. And in the 22nd District, we need an experienced and progressive leader to lead us in the 22nd. As your next state representative, I am committed to an equitable economic recovery and tax fairness, affordable housing and comprehensive health care for all, and a sustainable environment with substantive action on climate change. Since serving on council, I have worked to create affordable housing for our most vulnerable community members. We know that LGBTQ youth are significantly overrepresented in our homeless population, and in recognition of that, I have testified in support of additional resources for cities to address affordable housing in their communities. The City Council also applied funding for Rosie's Place so we could make that shelter for homeless youth 24/7 so they wouldn't have gaps in services. We've also passed gender neutral restroom ordinance, making our restrooms gender neutral. And we've recently created a diversity and equity commission, and we've stated that we specifically want to have an LGBTQ representative on that commission, recognizing the intersectionality between racial justice and LGBTQ rights. My values have been shaped by my experience. I was raised by a single mom who also experienced a substance use disorder. I'm the first in my family to graduate from college and earn my graduate degree from the Evergreen State College. I'm a former planning commissioner, community organizer, legislative aide, community impact director for the United Way of Thurston County, and I currently work as a policy analyst for Washington's community health centers, which collectively provide the majority of healthcare to Medicaid patients in Washington state. I've been endorsed by over 30 elected individuals in Thurston County, and also received the endorsement of over 40 organizations, including Equal Rights Washington, Planned Parenthood, and NARAL. I'm looking forward to hearing the conversation today, and if you want more information about me or my campaign, you can visit my website, which is votejessicabateman.com. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Bateman. And next is Mr. Hunt. Sam Hunt.
I know that guy.
Yes, so we're doing Up to 3 minutes of why you're running for office and how you're connected to the LGBT community.
Okay, well, thank you. Like has been said, I miss the cookies and the meeting in that nice room where we can have everybody sitting in a circle and discussing and talking. I just miss meeting with people. What can I say? I think we all do. You know, I was just looking here. You talk about how diversity impacts us and things. We have in the Senate Democratic Caucus, we have 4 members who are GLBTQ. We have 7 members who are members of color, and 3 members who are Jewish. And then there are a couple other relations. We have a couple of Sikhs as well. So we have become a very, very diverse caucus in the Democratic side of the Senate, not so much on the Republican side. You know, I have been in the legislature now. This is my 20th year. One of my first mentors in the legislature was Cal Anderson. I met him when I was, before I was working in the legislature, when I was an agency legislative director for Department of Information Services. And I became a very good friend of Cal's, and Cal guided me through a lot of discussions and interests in education. And then when I was elected to the House, my mentor was named as Ed Murray. So I've had a very close working relationship with members of the community in the legislature. Also, you know, as my kids were growing up, our basement, I've told this story to many of you, but our basement was a gathering place on Friday and Saturday nights for kids, pizza and pop and TV. And it was a very diverse group. I later found out when I asked my daughter why she didn't, you know, have a crush on a guy. She says, "Well, Dad, he's gay." Well, I didn't know. They were just members of the basement crew, you know. And then I did the same thing with Nathan. He says, "Well, sorry, but she's gay." So I learned a lot about, you know, everybody, my kids, and we just treated them as normal members of the family. And I sponsored every piece of equality legislation that went through the legislature, the anti-bullying, anti-harassment, the, you know, almost marriage, and then the marriage equality bill. And, you know, it's been a very honor to do that. I found out years after I was in, well, actually, when I was in the legislature, that my 2 best friends in high school who married each other were actually gay, and they did a heterosexual or man-woman marriage, but later they both came out and divorced and have lived their own lives. So I've had a lot of interaction with members of the LGBTQ+. If we add any more letters in there, I'm not going to be able to say that community. And, you know, I consider my very strong support in that members of that community are very good, you know, contributors to our community, and it's a joy to work with them. And, you know, I've been working with Beth and others to try to continue that and make sure that members of the community receive, you know, equal treatment and are honored. And at 11, 12, 13, 14, thank you very much.
Having my helper help.
All right.
Thank you, Mr.
Your
Hunt.
helper's good for something, huh? Oh.
All right, Ms. Dolan.
Thank you, Robert. So my earliest memories of being aware that people had different sexuality was my uncle was elected. He was actually the youngest person ever elected to the Washington State Senate. And he was elected back in 1932 from the 5th District, which at that point in time was in Spokane, Washington. And he was 26 years old. And Spokane citizens knew they had elected the youngest member of the Washington State Senate, but they didn't know they had elected a bisexual man. My family knew that. This was way before I was born, but my family, his parents, his siblings all knew that he was bisexual. And so I became very, very close to him throughout my life. He actually was living with me and my parents. I was still in high school when he committed suicide. And it's kind of your typical tragic story. Obviously, in 1932, he thought something was wrong with him. He did not realize that probably 10% of the population was in the same boat, because people didn't talk about it that far long ago. he put himself through all sorts of treatment to try to make himself better, to try to cure himself. And it breaks my heart because I love this guy so much. He was an artist who actually became an attorney, which was the wrong job for somebody who has this artistic brain. He was funny as all get out, and he was tragically broken inside, feeling like he just couldn't fit in. And at 68, he was an alcoholic, terribly depressed, jumped off the Monroe Street Bridge on his way home from work. And honestly, it changed our whole family's life. My mom and my aunt, to the day they died, kept wondering what they could have done to help him. And so I watched that from home. And then in my work, I worked with the Spokane Public Schools for 30 years, and I supervised a third of the principals in the district. And so I had like 10,000 students under the umbrella that was my job. And among 10,000 students, there's a lot of kiddos who are LGBTQ kids. And I tend to think that people go into school counseling oftentimes because they have their own personal traumas that they went through growing up, and they want to save other kids from going through that. And probably at least 3, maybe 4 times in the years that I had that job, I would be working with a school counselor who was helping a young student, high school student, decide to tell their parents that they were gay or lesbian or bisexual. And they would encourage them to have that conversation. And unfortunately, in those 3 or 4 times at that moment in time, the parents said, "You are no longer our child. You need to move, take your stuff and leave. We are no longer your parents." And that was heart-wrenching. I mean, here I have a school counselor who is brokenhearted. I have a kid who needs to find a different place to live. And so for all those reasons, personally, this topic of today's forum is really critical to me. Was that 3, meaning my 3 was up?
Yes.
Okay, we'll talk more. Thanks.
Okay. And okay, next on the list is, I'm sorry, I don't know how to say your name right. Carolina.
Carolina Mejia, yeah.
Yeah, okay. I was close. I just didn't want to mess it up.
Oh, thank you. Well, hello everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Carolina Mejia, and I'm running for Thurston County Commissioner in District 1. One of the reasons I decided to run for County Commissioner was because after working there since 2015, seeing the change of power, the decisions that were being made were not only affecting me as an employee, but also as a resident. And I realized we needed to bring accountability back into our local government. So I decided to run for this position. I bring with me knowledge of our local criminal justice system, which I think is very valuable, especially because it takes up to 60% of our budget currently. But also because I really want to bring accountability, transparency, and unity to the county. I'm all about building bridges instead of breaking them down. I feel we really need to work with our local jurisdictions, but also our local departments, local department heads, to be able to have equity across the board. My platform is based on affordable housing, protecting our environment, having a more inclusive government, and of course, reassessing our budget. I am very honored to be invited here today. My work with LGBTQI youth started ever since I was back in Tennessee when I was a teenager. I joined the Tennessee Equality Project when it was started back in 2005. Yeah, it makes me think back on my teenage years. And I joined their board really early on, and I was a representative in Bedford County for them. We were trying to get marriage equality across the board, and it was definitely an uphill battle up in Tennessee. But my work did not stop there. Once I got into college, I formed the LGBTQI group, where basically it was just about getting, in Tennessee, it was really looked frowned upon. And so I wanted for them to be able to feel inclusive. They were my friends. Many of them, they're still like my brothers and sisters. And we really wanted to work for them and have that education out there, especially when it came to HIV and other diseases, because there wasn't that at all where I came from. And I wanted people to be educated, especially on those issues, and for there to be acceptance. I joined immigration firm, and one of the major caseloads I took on were for trans people that were fleeing their countries because of just assaults and awful crimes, and they were seeking asylum here in the U.S., but also for LGBTQI people that were here in the U.S. victims of crimes. And so I took them through UB's process, which was sometimes very long, and we have to search for an open. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and sorry, my internet is a little unstable. Okay, it's starting to work again. Next is Mr. Stedman. I believe I got your name right.
Yes, you did very
Awesome.
well. For those of you that don't know me, my name is Michael Stedman. I'm a Lacey City Council member. I'm running for the other district, District 2, for Thurston County Commissioner. Like I said, as a City Council member, currently serving close to my last year in my second term. I was Planning Commissioner before that. I'm a military veteran. I was in the United States Marine Corps and the Marine Corps Reserves for 8 years. And my family background is a long line of building trades mechanics, from millwrights to sheet metal workers to plumbers to pipe fitters, you name it. Organized labor, working families, and I love representing family wage jobs and good benefits, so people can live a good life with the few hours they have during the day away from work. They get to spend with their family is quality time. Having said that, the LGBTQ plus community is a very close community of mine. My whole platform is inclusion, infrastructure, and innovation. Inclusion's first and foremost, and everybody being included and having a voice and being valued and respected is number one, in not just politics, but in life in general. Personally, to me, I have several nieces and family members, and one of my best friends from high school. You know, I saw how he got treated differently because of his sexual preference. And, you know, we really need to respect and honor and value each other as human beings more. And the best place to start is at the political, in the political theater. So it's just a core value, and we need to apply it, inclusion, to every aspect of our life, because we are just we're human. And if we treated each other like humans and we cared about each other, 90% of our problems and issues would go away. So I want to bring that back to civics in the local government, where people can come and be a part of their government without fear of repercussion or persecution or being treated differently. Whether you're a person, a business, whatever, we all deserve to be treated the same and valued. So any way I can help do that, then our quality of life and our community is going to be a place where we can call it home and not just a place to live. So thank you for the time. It's really, really my top priority is the people taking back their government, representing them better.
Thank you, Mr. Stedman. All right. Did I
Thank
miss
you.
anyone?
Appreciate it.
Did I miss anyone? Okay, good.
Can I add one little bit of trivia?
Yes.
This is Sam.
Yes, go ahead.
I mentioned those two good friends of mine in high school. Interesting thing about, they were both elected to the House of Representatives at different times in the 1970s from Yakima. Of course, they were not out yet, but they were both elected and served one term, and then the Republicans came and got them because they were Democrats. But they both served one term and were close friends, and that makes me the third person in my class of 116 out of West Valley High School in Yakima to have been elected to the legislature, which is interesting little bit of trivia. Okay.
That's cool. Thank you. All right. Now that opening statements are over, let's run over the few little rules. Dana or I will ask a question of each of you. Ask a question. Each of you will have 1 minute to respond. We will be a little more stickler with the timer. We will interrupt you, forewarning, at 1 minute. Please no interrupting each other, and please be respectful to one another. Please keep yourself on mute while you are not speaking. This forum is being recorded and will be posted to the PFLAG Olympia's Facebook page in the coming days. Now that we have gone over the forum rules and have done the introductions, we're going to jump right into the questions that have been submitted by PFLAG members. Okay, first, a report in 2017 from the University of Chicago states that LGBTQ young adults had a 120% chance, higher percent chance, of reporting homelessness compared to youth who identify as heterosexual and cisgendered. The report also found that 1 in 30 youth ages 13 to 17 experienced a form of homelessness over a 12-month period, and 1 in 10 young adults ages 18 to 25 experienced a form of homelessness over a 12-month period. With the explosion of homelessness in our state, what are you going to do to help the LGBT homeless youth? And we'll start with Jessica Bateman.
Thank you so much, and thank you for that statistic. As I mentioned in my opening comments, folks within the LGBTQ plus community are disproportionately represented within our homeless population. It's a very serious issue. Not only are they represented, but they are at risk of potential violence and harm. So first, homelessness is multifaceted. First and foremost, we have to build more housing in Washington state. We are 225,000 units behind just to keep up with population growth. I'm ready as a former planning commissioner and a city council member to tackle that issue at the state level so we can incentivize and hold cities accountable so they're actually building the housing that they need for their communities, including low-income housing, housing that is affordable for folks that are on disability, like $300 a month, market rate housing, and housing for youth and LGBT community members. Rosie's Place was an example that I gave earlier. That's a shelter for individuals that are youth and unhoused that specifically has resources and services for folks within the LGBTQIA community. It's a safe place for them to go. The City of Olympia added funding for them. I think at the state level, we need to be monitoring and reinvesting in programs like that. All right, thank you.
And over to Ms. Dolan.
Thanks, Robert. So we have some really good laws on the books in Washington state that should help with both job discrimination, workplace discrimination, as well as housing discrimination. The dilemma is laws aren't always paid attention to in every community in Washington state. So that's something we need to do, is keep monitoring the fact that those laws are there, and if they're not honored, that we need to have some force put into the situation to make sure they are honored. I agree with Jessica. We need more homes. We need more housing. And right now with the COVID situation, and if the federal government really isn't going to send out any more COVID money, this thing's going to escalate beyond what we can even sit here and imagine. So I think there's a lot of people in huge need right now, lower socioeconomic populations, and that certainly includes a lot of our LGBTQ population. You know, a lot of folks have great jobs. They're making good money. They're doing just fine, but there's a whole lot of people that are at risk in that population. So I would say try to get more money. I'll stop.
Okay, thank you. And Mr. Hunt. Oh, yes, Mr. Beth, sorry. Ms. Dolio.
Right. Well, thank you for that question. As many as 40% of homeless youth are LGBTQ. It is definitely a disproportionate number of LGBTQ youth who find themselves homeless and are also subject to, you know, harm at home. So very significant issue. I am happy to say that as the vice chair of the capital budget, I was able to help get, working with Community Youth Service and Tacoma Housing Authority, about $2 million or more into helping to build the Arlington Drive Youth Campus in Tacoma, which has 58 apartments and 12 crisis beds. Now, this is a call for my new members and Lori and Sam that they need operational money to keep that facility open. It is targeted to helping LGBTQ youth have a place to live, homeless youth have a place to live. And so we need to work in our operating budget to see if we can help with some great costs. Thank you.
Okay, now to Mr. Hunt. Oh, you're muted. Mr. Hunt, you're muted.
You're probably lucky because I am. Trying not to repeat what they said, obviously we've put a lot of money in the state into low-income housing in the Housing Trust Fund, and that is one start. But we look around town, it's really troubling to see the number of total homeless people, and we need more mental health counseling. I think one of the things that has really helped in this community is the pizza clutch that we have in our local schools that allows GLBTQ students to get together and share ideas. Obviously not so much right now with distance learning, but I think it's been a real help, and I've been a supporter of that. So I think that's one thing, and just working to increase mental health and find more housing, and also providing more counseling in schools. I'll end there.
All right, and Mr. Pierpoint.
Great, thank you. Well, homelessness is one of the issues I'm very concerned with. But when we start talking about youth homeless, it's even more of an issue and concerning. When I was working in our school district, that's where kids typically get their meals. That might be the only meals they get when they're in school. And with schools not being in person right now, I'm very concerned about nutrition with our kids, particularly the homeless. We partnered with a program called Homeless Backpacks, and they gave a lot of food out every Friday so that kids could eat on the weekends. Some of them were homeless or did not have a home that they were staying in permanently. But there are good organizations that I've worked with over the years, like Rosie's Place, Haven House, Community Youth Services, Safe Place. I mean, we need to keep working to try to get these kids off the street, because homelessness is a problem, but when you have homeless children or kids or teenagers, that really should be a focus. And so I thank you for the question.
Thank you. And Carolina, I'm sorry, but can't get your last name.
So for me, it's houselessness is a huge issue here in Thurston County. We're seeing the numbers rise exponentially, and it's a complex issue. I feel just due to the pandemic, we're going to see even more of houseless population increase, and that includes youth. So we really have to work with our housing regional council that just got reinstated, that's working with local jurisdictions, but also I want to involve local organizations such as Coyote Village, Pizza Clutch, and really increase the capability of what they're able to do right now. I feel currently local organizations are each pulling their own way, but I want all of us to be pulling the same way and really work together to see what solutions we can come up with. Again, it's a complex issue, but I feel like if we work together, if we really invest in it, it's something that we can come up with a solution. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Stedman. Are you there? We don't hear you.
Can you guys hear me all right?
Now we can.
Okay, I'm sorry. A proven effective leadership. I'm going to continue to build off of what we've done already. Case in point, when it comes to homelessness, we have a proven solution in Lacey, the Lacey Veterans Service Hub, where 84 providers provide assistance to our veterans with many challenges. Homelessness is just one, so housing assistance, mental health crisis, drug addiction, you name it. We can do the same. If we can do that, and it's a great place to start, our veterans, but we can do the same by our youth, by our elderly, and by people that just fell on hard times in tough situations. It's a proven platform that works. So, let's not look at through the lens of helping every veteran, but we should look through the lens of helping every person. Us humans need to be treating each other with more humanity, right? So let's just do just like the veterans. Let's do the same by everybody.
Thank you. And did I get everybody? Making sure. Yes. Okay. Referendum 90. Do you support or oppose this referendum and the sex education bill passed last year? And it's kind of a two-parter. If you do support this referendum and it passes, can you list some positive outcomes that you see for LGBT youth and heterosexual youth? And we will start with, on the bottom here, Beth Dolio.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Oh, you're okay. Referendum 90, do you support or oppose this referendum and the sex education bill passed last year? And if it passes, do you see any positive outcomes for LGBTQ youth and heterosexual youth?
Yes, I'm an absolute supporter of R90. I voted for it in the legislature. I voted for it on my ballot. I think that we have a responsibility as educators and as to provide science-based sexual education and really, help kids at the kindergarten level understand about what consent is and what is appropriate touch and what is inappropriate touch. And then all the way through, as we move through to high school, helping kids understand issues around consent, around sexuality, around LGBTQ youth. And I'm really excited about the possibility of this moving forward. And it's also important that if parents choose, they can opt out, which is an important part of the bill and something that, some constituents talked about the importance of that. So I support that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. And
go at this point. So thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for coming, Ms. Dolio. And we're going to go to, I'm going to try it this time, Ms. Miha. I know I screwed that up.
You're fine. Carolina Mejia. So yes, I do support the sex ed bill. I do it from an immigration point of view too, where I see that it's really needed in the immigrant communities, especially because a lot of people don't have that education. It's very clouded in religion and what that is. I had an incident where this young lady thought she was trans because she thought that if she liked girls, then the only way she could like girls is if she transitioned into a male. And it was just through education that she's like, oh no, I'm actually a lesbian. And so it's this vital education that is needed for our youth to really educate them on, what you're feeling, what is it, and your sexuality, and what is consent. We see it a lot in immigrant communities where consent is not really taught about, and we're seeing these high rises in young teen pregnancy. And I feel it's so important that that be taught in all schools so everyone has equal access. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Makia. And over to Mr. Pierpoint.
Yes, thank you. So I'm opposed to R90. I've got grandkids, I've got my kids, I've talked to quite a few people. I think the intent was good, but possibly the law's wording, the delivery just didn't resonate with parents. And when you're dealing with parents and their kids, there's probably nothing more important. So I think there's more work that needs to be done in that arena. That's my stance.
Thank you. And Mr. Stedman.
Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
All right. Hey, I support anything that empowers and educates not just our youth, but everybody in general. Politics in general is where it's at a lot because we don't have these difficult discussions that are sensitive issues where we respect and value each other to the point where we can get through a lot of the main triggering points, if you will. But we shouldn't be ashamed of our sexuality or our culture or anything else about what every individual has. You know, and we don't want to go backwards. We want to go forwards. You know, and far too often when we shelter our kids, even adults, they become victims because they just don't know. They're ignorant. So again, anything that educates and empowers not just our youth, but people in general, I'm all for.
Thank you. And Mr. Hunt.
Thank you. Well, I voted for it. I support it. I contributed to the campaign. I am an endorser on the website. I think it's a real disservice that the Family Policy Institute and people like Maya Espinoza are using untruthful propaganda to try to sensationalize what is common sense law. All it does is make what we've been doing voluntary, mandatory for all school districts. In the first 4 grades, it deals with social emotional learning, not with sex and sex positions as the Family Policy Institute tries to make out. So I think it's very good. And finally, local school boards make the decision as to what the curriculum is going to be. It's not mandated. It's not in any certain textbook. It's a good, sound law, and I wholeheartedly support it.
Thank you, Mr. Hunt. And Ms. Stolen.
Thanks, Robert. So I am supportive of the bill. I worked really, really hard to get it passed. I put a link to the bill in the chat box. I would encourage Dusty to read the bill because there is so much fallacy out there about what we did with sexual health education. And I listened to 6 hours of it on the House floor before we passed it. I taught first grade for 6 years. I taught in a low socioeconomic school. That was in 1973. The curriculum I taught in 1973 in Spokane is the same curriculum that's in this new bill. It's stranger danger. It's good touch, bad touch. Why is that important? Some of the people that are hurting our children the most are their very own parents. I had a little girl in my class who had fresh cigarette burns all over her beautiful little 6-year-old body one day. She needs to be taught that it's her body and she needs to give consent. And if an adult tries to hurt her or another child tries to hurt her as she gets older, it's her right to say no. And if that person doesn't accept no, it's her right to tell somebody who can help her. Thanks.
Thank you. And Ms. Bateman.
Thank you. I do support Referendum 90 because I believe that all students deserve age-appropriate, inclusive, comprehensive sexual health, and that for all students, they need access to resources and information about healthy relationships, boundaries, consent, and saying no. Specifically, LGBTQ youth deserve to see themselves reflected positively in sexual health education and experience acceptance by their teachers and their peers. Thank you.
Thank you. And the next question is, what would or could you do to help in the fight against the violence plaguing the transgender community, especially the transgender women of color? We'll start with Ms. Mita.
We'll get there. Right now, we've seen the numbers exponentially rise, and I think it's something that we need to address. One of my things I want to do is, again, have a more inclusive government. And one of the things I would like to do is create a commission on our local government, just to see and have basically all members of society, but also an LGBTQ board member that will really resonate the idea of what we actually need. When it comes to safety and justice, which is something that I feel we really need to address. Right now, I know the relationship is really broken with our sheriff's department, so I really want to create that bridge again, where we are definitely working with them and seeing what can we do to protect the most vulnerable in our society. Thank you.
Thank you. And Mr. Pierpoint.
Thank you. Could you repeat the question for me, please?
Yeah. What would or could you do to help in the fight against the violence plaguing the transgender community, especially the transgender women of color?
Well, first of all, you have to make clear that it's unacceptable, and then you have to be able to back that up. I spent my entire career protecting people's rights and protecting them from harm. But you need to also go meet with the community to find out where is violence coming from, what's the predominant areas that it's resulting from, and then start attacking those areas. Like with all crime, sometimes there are ways you can prevent that, sometimes there aren't. Prevention's always better because then you don't have a victim. But if you do have a victim, you need to take enforcement and make it clear that it's unacceptable.
All right. And Ms. Dolan, or wait, did I already do you? No, okay, Ms. Dolan.
It's a combination, but I'd say the most important thing is right now, I think we as a society are missing mental health, emergency help. I think too often we call 911 and we get police officers and we're putting them in positions that they're not even trained to handle, because we don't have that mental health component worked into emergency response. I think there's a price tag to doing that, but I think it would not only help our police officers not be put in situations where they really don't have the training to respond, but it would certainly help a lot of our citizens, our LGBTQ community, who often finds themselves victims, to get the right person there to help them in that moment. So that would be my wish list. If we could do that with mental health, it would save a lot of lives.
All right, thank you. And Mr. Stedman?
You guys hear me all right?
Yes.
All right. Hey, no hate, not now, not ever. There's no real true freedom for any of us until we're all free. We should never tolerate hate of any kind. We should stand up against it and speak up against it always. So if we did that, most of our problems, the root of those problems would go away.
All right. And I think it's Ms. Bateman.
Thank you. Well, when I first hear this question, I think about LGBTQ people of color feeling safe enough to report crimes such as this. So we need to have resources for those folks in the form of organizations that can help them and provide them with a safe place to be. Also housing resources so they have a safe place that they can go to and a safe, secure place to call home. Also improving the relationship between law enforcement and LGBTQ people of color. I know in Olympia, we've heard, and historically, LGBTQ people of color have been the victims of violence at the hands of law enforcement. So when we talk about these folks still being victims of violence, we want to ensure that they have good relationships with law enforcement. That means education for law enforcement. Our new Diversity and Equity Commission is going to be exploring racial justice as it relates to the LGBTQ community, and we're going to hear directly from them. Because these types of crimes get reported at the local level, I think a lot of that work needs to happen there, but the state has a role to play in helping provide leadership and recommendations for how that moves forward.
Time, perfect timing. All right. To the state legislature candidate. What? I think so. Did I call on you, Sam Hunt, yet?
No, you didn't.
Oh my God, I'm so sorry.
That's
Sam
all right.
Hunt.
I'll try to be quick. Education, 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 counseling, and education. I speak of things like Referendum 90, which teaches about social emotional learning and getting along and recognizing and working with each other's differences. We all need to speak out for fairness. And I would recommend that you look at the Cahoots program in Oregon, in Eugene, that they run, that brings social workers and psychological workers to homes, not always police. And finally, we created the Office of Equality or Equity last year in the legislature, or this year, before COVID hit, and the governor vetoed the money to start it. Little did we know how really crucial that was going to be. So one of the things I'm going to work for, we're all going to work for, is make sure we get funding for the Office of Equity.
All right, thank you. And to the state legislature candidates, and this would also go to the county candidates, with the federal Supreme Court possibly moving to the right of politics and possibly overturning LGBT protections and marriage equality, what can you do to protect LGBT rights here at the state and county level? And we'll start up at the top with Ms. Bateman.
Thank you. And it's horrible that we even have to ask this question. We've made so many strides at the national level and at the state level. And I would say here in Washington state, our legislature can work to uphold the laws that we've already placed on the books. We also have a stalwart attorney general who continues to win in challenging the federal government. So for us, we really have to make sure that we maintain our majority in the Senate and in the House and make sure that we continue to uphold the laws that we have in Washington and continue to be aggressive about looking for ways that we can improve the rights of people in our state so we can protect against the things that are happening at the federal level.
Thank you. And Mr. Hunt?
Well, I think we are fortunate that we have a legislature that has been way out in front of the federal government on the issue of equality and marriage equality. And I think our state laws will stand for that and for choice for women and things like that. We have a good sound basis, and we'll fight like hell to keep them.
And Mr. Stedman?
Just hear me all right?
Yes.
I think it really comes down to just being the best advocates we can. That goes with all our work, no matter what position or and stand up for what's right and making equity and inclusion the top priority.
Mr. Pierpoint?
Yes, thanks. Well, I'm a firm believer government should stay out of people's lives and not get involved in things like those, like marriage and those types of things. And I'm a little more optimistic. Workplace discrimination based on sexual orientation passed the Supreme Court by a 6-3 vote. And so hopefully we are moving in the right direction, even with the Supreme Court that people feel might be leaning more to the right.
And I'm gonna try to get this right. Mika, Miss Mika?
We'll get there. I have hope.
Right.
Mejia.
Mejia.
So, at the county level, there's not much that we can do, but always promoting inclusivity, especially, and having policies in place that definitely protect our community members, but not only our community members, but our county staff as well, from any kind of just having those policies. I feel like it's really important, and just working with the legislator and seeing what we can do.
And Ms. Doland?
Thank you. I'm kind of forgetting the question now. It has to do with us protecting our laws. So I'm going to go back to what Senator Hunt said. And we have some really great laws in Washington state. We are way in the forefront of protecting our citizens against what a newly incorporated Supreme Court might take away. The the good news is, if the U.S. Constitution doesn't specifically give rights to the federal government, they belong to the states, and we have taken full advantage of that. We've built our own wall around the state of Washington to keep Donald Trump out of the state of Washington. I think it drives him crazy, which is always fun to watch. Right before I came on here, I was watching the photography, the Obama photographers hour-long show. I don't know how many of you have seen that. And when they were showing the day that marriage passed, I'm sitting there, tears dripping down my face, thinking I have to go put on more mascara if I'm going to talk to all of you. But we can't go back. If the Supreme Court takes the nation back, Washington will stay where it is, and we need to fight to change the Supreme Court so we can get that back. Because it's not okay to go back.
All right. How do you perceive equity in public policy? And we will start with Jessica Bateman.
Thank you. Well, when I think of equity, like I said before in my opening statement, my lived experience has shaped my values. My mom worked her way out of poverty. She grew up in a trailer park in rural Montana and got a job in the public sector as a custodian at a wastewater treatment center. And that job provided her with economic security and healthcare, raising me as a single mom, which has really informed my lens of ensuring that everyone has an opportunity to thrive. And we need to make sure that everyone has those resources and extra help to make sure that they also have that opportunity. It's informed my work to organize for union jobs, to fight for quality health care for all, and to fight for our most vulnerable community members. And I'll continue taking that fight into the legislature.
Thank you, Ms. Bateman. And Mr. Hunt.
Well, thank you. We've had long discussions on this in our caucus, being, I think, probably the most diverse caucus in the legislature. And one thing we have decided is we will look at every legislative proposal that comes through with what we call an equity lens and how it impacts all groups, including people of color and others, and apply that equity lens to what we do for state policy.
All right. And Mr. Stedman.
You hear me all right?
Yes.
I look through it. I look at it as a natural order because I think it's a conscious decision for an individual to generalize or throw something in a box and discriminate against it or treat it differently. It's only natural for you to treat people the way you want to be treated, and looking through that lens again, that we're all important, we're all have value and worth. So that's the way I see it.
Thank you. And Ms. Mahia.
Yeah, see, we're getting there. So for me, I feel like with my life experiences I bring, and just kind of like a social justice lens, and just with my background in criminal justice, I would want to bring equity just across the board by reviewing policies not only in our county, but definitely in our criminal justice. I know our criminal justice departments have put forth proposals to bring definitely, bail reform and other proposals that have been denied by the county commission. So those are proposals that I want to take a look at, see if we can have equity across the board, work with our local departments, and see how we can do that.
All right. And Ms. Doland.
Thanks, Robert. The equity lens, there's lots of people who say government needs to stay out of these issues. Usually the people that say that are white males who have been in control of our society since 1775, and they have never had our society say no to them. They've gotten to write all the rules. What equity does, and why government oftentimes has to get involved in equity issues, is we need to have every citizen be a member of our society and have the same voice in our society. And so I also agree that government shouldn't step in any more than it needs to, but there are certain aspects that government does need to step in to make sure all citizens are given the most equal rights possible. And I think that's when we need good government. Thanks.
And I can't remember who was next. Dusty, yes, Mr. Pierpoint, sorry.
I don't know if I was next. I just haven't gone yet. So similar to being in law enforcement, if you're a legislator, you take an oath to uphold the Constitution. And I think that is extremely important when you're looking at situations of equity, because people's rights and justice being applied equally with our Constitution in mind should be the first and foremost thing that we apply to any law or things that we're passing. And so I do feel it's important, and it should be something that's thought of every time we take action.
All right, has anyone not answered this question yet? Okay. Moving on to what legislation have you passed or worked on that helps LGBT community? And we'll start with Mr. Hunt.
Well, I touched on that, Robert, when I gave my earlier remarks, but I have been a sponsor and voted for every one of the equality bills that came through. Also, when I was on the North Thurston School Board, I helped pass a anti-bullying resolution or policy for our school district, even before we got into the issue deeply in the state legislature, or before I got into it in the state legislature anyway. So I think I've been at the forefront of that, and I will continue to be at the forefront of supporting legislation and efforts to support the community.
Mr. Stedman?
You hear me all right?
Yes.
I think everything I work on represents them, because if it doesn't represent them, it doesn't represent anybody. Though maybe there's something absolutely directly that I contributed to for that sole purpose, maybe not, but everything I do is with inclusion as the top priority, because people need to be treated like people. We're no different. We all have a heart and a soul and a mind, and that should be valued.
And Ms. Dolan?
Thanks, Robert. So I have voted for every single LGBTQ bill that comes along in the past 4 years. For all the personal reasons I shared early on, it's very, very important to me that we find true equity for our LGBTQ population. The two bills that I probably worked the hardest on, my wheelhouse is K-12 education, and so the one about bullying and cyberbullying, the one about conversion therapy having to go away, and then the sexual health education. Those bills are the ones I'm the most proud of. I am so thankful I taught that little girl in 1973 about good touch, bad touch, and adults can't hurt you, because I think me teaching her that curriculum changed that child's life.
Mr. Pierpoint? Getting that right, hopefully.
Can you repeat the question again, please?
Yes. What legislation have you passed or worked on that helps?
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, as the rookie here, I haven't legislated, but I did work in law enforcement for many years, enforcing legislation and ensuring that equal treatment for all victims. And working in the schools particularly, we worked a lot with bullying and harassment. But as far as making law, I have not done that.
Okay. And okay, is it Miha or Mahi?
Yeah.
Mahia, okay.
Yeah. I'm a first-time candidate, so I haven't legislated. I'm running for a local position. But I've definitely been an activist throughout my life, trying to pass bills not only in Washington State, but also in Tennessee. I've gone to the other Washington, D.C. several times protesting, making sure we have rights across the board. I was protesting for DACA and, of course, equality in marriage. So I'm always going to be an activist at heart, I feel like, and always going to be sure there's equity across the board when it comes to, our community.
Thank you. And Ms. Bateman.
Thank you. We've done a number of things in the city of Olympia, including establishing gender neutral restrooms, the Charter for Compassion, which makes us a welcoming community for everyone. But I think that the most significant would have been me leading the Home Fund campaign, which passed in 2018. It's a historical affordable housing measure, the only one that exists in Thurston County and the first in the South Puget Sound. It's generating $2.3 million a year in direct revenue, and we're leveraging $4 million a year. We're breaking ground on our very first project next year with 120 units of permanent supportive low barrier housing. There's also funding within the Home Fund dollars for shelter for places like Rosie's Place to provide continual safe places for people to go. That would be the biggest achievement, and I hope to do even more in the legislature.
All right. And I think I got everybody, and we're gonna go ahead and do our last question. This is kind of the closing out question. So I think we'll give you 2 minutes, closing statement, and also talk about what makes you most pleased about your personal and professional life. And we're going to start with Mr. Pierpoint. Oh, you're muted, Mr. Pierpoint. Saying of 2020, you're muted.
Think I'd have it down by now. Sorry.
You're good.
I've got over 30 years living and working in the most diverse community in Thurston County. I have experience and I care. As a board member of the Washington State Sheriffs and Police Chiefs Association, I helped develop the school resource program and worked in the largest, most diverse school district in Thurston County. I worked on accreditation, which was evaluating law enforcement agencies statewide. And the Lacey Police Department was first to be accredited under the new standards. We had the lowest crime rate in Thurston County and we're the most diverse police department. I have experience working complex issues, and I've seen the impact small business has been subjected to recently. And I'm encouraging protecting citizens from violence and private property from vandalism. Support our Constitution and equal justice. Rights must be protected and justice applied equally. I'm vested in this area. I grew up here. I graduated from Timberline High School and the Evergreen State College. I've raised kids here. Now I have grandkids here. Protecting all people from harassment and bullying has been part of my career and my life, and I will continue to protect people from unfair treatment. Most rewarding thing for me is family, raising my children and now seeing my grandchildren raised in this area. Professionally, it's knowing when someone walks up to you and says, "You helped me, you changed my life," that makes everything worthwhile. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Pierpoint. And Ms. Bateman.
Thank you. From organizing home care workers to empowering at-risk youth and fighting for comprehensive health care for all, this has all reinforced my commitment to ensuring that no one is left out and no one is left behind. It's been an honor to serve the people of Olympia for the last 5 years, and I'm looking forward to serving as your next state legislator. Some of the most rewarding opportunities that I've had since being in office have been mentoring young people. I take every opportunity that I can to go out to Evergreen when I'm invited to talk to students about how they can get engaged locally. I've mentored a number of people since being on council myself and hiring people on my campaigns, because I know that we have to pass on that torch, and the young people today are our leaders of tomorrow. And I take that very seriously, and it's also very, very rewarding. Thank you for the opportunity to speak with you today. Please visit my website at votejessicabateman.com to learn more or to contact me. I would be honored to have your support.
Thank you. And Mr. Stedman.
Thank you, guys. You hear me all right?
Yes.
All right. I'm very proud in pretty much everything I do for the community, because it's a place, you know, I want to be a home just not for me, but for everybody. You know, this is a special place, and it wasn't by accident that my family chose to raise our family here. Great parks, great place to get educated. The people are awesome, and I'm proud of using the 3 I's as our platform: infrastructure, inclusion, and innovation. Doing things smarter and more efficient, right? Infrastructure, right? not kicking the can down the road, but getting things done. You know, that's why I-5's the way it is, because we didn't do anything for 40 years. I could go on countless examples for infrastructure, but inclusion, again, at the top, because we're representing everybody. Everybody has value and worth. One of the best things I'm most proud about is when we flew the pride flag on City Hall. But until the day comes where we don't get pushback for that, that means we have work to be done, and we can do better and expect better and demand better. There should never be a day that that flag can't be flown anywhere and it not be respected. And that's just one example. But that is essentially everything I'm about is just equity, fairness for everybody. And I'm proud of everything that I've done and what I will do, not just for me and my family, but for you and your family and your friends and their friends and their family. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Stedman. And I apologize for this whole thing. Mahia?
Yeah.
Okay.
We got there. See, I told you we would get there. So anyways, my name is Carolina Mejia, and as a parent, you want what's best for your children, and you want to leave the world better than it was before. And so that's why I'm running for office, because I want to make sure that my kids have the access to affordable housing when they grow up, to have clean water and clean air, and to be sure that, you know, they are a part of this local government and that they are equitable across the board. I am an immigrant, a working mother, and a proud resident of Thurston County. And I am running because I want to bring accountability, unity, and transparency back into our local government. I want to make sure our environment is protected, that we have affordable housing, and that we have an empathetic response to our houselessness crisis. I also want to make sure we reassess our budget, but also have a thorough pandemic response, and that we don't cut social services that are needed, especially during this pandemic when people are needing it the most. But we also have to think about our local economy and our local farmers. And so I am always happy to learn about new issues like I have, and just talking to community members. If you'd like to learn more about me, my website is carolinaforthurston.com. Thank you so much for having me here today.
Thank you. And thank you for putting up with me. Ms. Dolan.
Thank you. So I started life in Spokane, my work career as a first grade teacher. I've talked about that a little bit. And probably the thing that gives me the most joy in life is mentoring other people. I really enjoy people, and I enjoy all different kinds of people. If people were all the same, I think life would be really boring. And as a teacher, as a mentor for principals, as then I retired after 30 years there, came to Olympia to work for Governor Gregoire as her policy director, where I hired 26 policy advisors and learned all their content and was a mentor to each of them, helping them figure out what they wanted to do next with their career. Being elected to the House of Representatives 4 years ago is sort of like the frosting on the cake of my life. The word pride, what I'm proud of is that the voters of Thurston County trust me to be in this job on their behalf. And I'm actually hope there's no tenure in these jobs. You have to get hired every 2 years. And I'm hoping that once again, they will trust me with their confidence that that I can represent them. Part of that's having a great team. And we've had a great team in the 22nd. I think we have the smartest constituents in the 22nd of any place in Washington state. I mean, most of the people here, like every third house is either a state employee or a former state employee. And I get most of my good bill ideas straight from our constituents here, because they're always thinking about better government. And we are their partners. They see us as their partners, and we actually get those bills passed together. They bring the advocacy. We do the internal work, and we've gotten some really good bills passed in that way. So I'm hoping that I've earned your vote in a continuing fashion to get this job for 2 more years. And if I did, that would make me very proud. Thanks.
Thank you, Ms. Dolan. And Mr. Hunt.
Well, thank you. And thank you for PFLAG for giving us a chance to share our views today. You know, I've lived in Olympia now for over 40 years. I've raised my kids here. They both went through North Thurston Public Schools and went through college. And they both live here. They chose to live and reside in Thurston County and work here, which I think says something about the Olympia area. And I think the most rewarding thing is what I'm going to be able to do, what we're going to be able to do for my 6-year-old grandson, Rory. You know, what we do, I often say, we don't have quick solutions. What we do takes time to take effect, whether it be in education or transportation, or even in mental health. And what I want to do is make this a more rewarding and better place for my grandson and his friends to grow up and live in Olympia and live in Lacey and Tumwater and make this an even better place to live and work. So that's my goal in that. And, you know, I was thinking through all of this, you know, the number of questions. One of the things that usually we respond to or that happens is people discriminate against people and fear people because they don't know. And whatever we can do to increase knowledge will make this a better place and help us get along better and make us be proud of each other. So thank you, and I hope I can have your support for those 75% who have not mailed their ballots yet.
All right. I'd like to thank all the candidates for being here today. And with that, thank you.
In the chat box, this huge judges bench guide. You probably all know about it. I'm probably the only person who here has never seen it before, but I ran across it today just as I was going over legislation that we've passed. It is amazingly good. It's something we should all download and put on our desktops. It kind of is the Cliff Notes version to all the laws that have been passed for LGBTQ citizens, and it's just a great primer that we should all have on our desktops. So I'll put it in right now. Thank you.
All right. Thank you all for coming. Thank you for being patient with me when I'm not very good with names. Yes, so I'm going to hit stop record.